Thanks, Tom. They, too, are among the brave, of course, all across this nation. Let's return now to Baghdad and our three correspondents.
Thanks, David. Yeah, we're here, and it's very quiet outside. There still are an occasional flash of light off to the south of our location, far in the distance. There have been no big blasts in the recent past. No signs of anti-aircraft fire right now. No sounds of jets overhead. It's an eerie stillness that we talked about earlier in the day. Bernie Shaw is here now.
I just want to make this observation. The President of the United States is coming up to address his nation and the world very shortly. And that we are on the air means that the government of Iraq, its ears are wide open, and it will be listening to President Bush very closely. We told you earlier in the week that the Information Ministry had received its own satellite dish, and prior to that, the Foreign Ministry had its. We've got to run. Somebody's knocking on the door. John and I are going to hide. Peter, here.
Yes, this is Peter Arnett signing off for a minute, and I'll see what the action is outside.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. We assume that's not the Fuller Brush salesman. Let's go to Robert Vito. He's standing by now on the west coast of the United States at San Diego, another important naval base. Robert.
Well, I'm at an apartment complex in San Diego, and I've spent the last few hours with several wives whose husbands are serving aboard ships in the Persian Gulf. And we've all been glued to the television set watching CNN, mesmerized by what we've seen and by what we've heard. And it's been an emotional time for these ladies as they held hands and they prayed and had these feelings that I'll let them tell you about. Denise, what was your feeling, your reaction as you watched the events unfold?
I was scared, frightened for my husband, for the guys on his ship, and for the Iraqi people, because it's come to this, you know. This crazy man has brought us this far. I back my husband up. I'm very proud of what he does and who he is and where he's at right now. But I'm also scared because I want him home.
If you had a moment to talk to the president, what would you say to him, the president of the United States?
To get it done and over with as quickly as possible. I'd like to see Saddam Hussein brought in front of the UN Council and tried. That's the way I feel about it. This man shouldn't be walking free. I think he ought to be tried for what he's done and what he's put the Iraqi people as well as the United States and all the countries that are over there through.
Thank you, Denise. Kay, could you just come up? Kay Hunter is
very, very well, and our losses, I think, will be commensurately lower.
Well, what does that mean when you say two fighters are escorting an enemy fighter plane back to a base? I mean, how would that happen? What would you do?
What it means is that these tornadoes were up on air patrol, and they're trying to keep the Iraqi fighters away. They must have come upon this fella, and rather than shoot, he decided he'd go home with them.
This would, I guess, also be the first indication we have of Allied forces joining with the U.S. Air Forces.
That's right. We thought the British were aloft. Now we know they are.
Now, the other development that we have now confirmed, and we had reported earlier, and General Christ talked about, that the first strikes were apparently made by Tomahawk missiles. That's the cruise missile. That has now been confirmed by military authorities, as I understand.
That's right. And there are also reports that at least some of those Tomahawks were coming out of these two battleships, the Missouri and Wisconsin, which carry Tomahawks on both of them.
So that's it, Dan, and a significant development to be sure, if indeed this proves to be correct.
Bob and General Chris, we know the Tomahawk missiles have been fired. We believe they were fired from U.S. ships in the Persian Gulf and in the Red Sea. General Chris, you once talked about the possibility of firing Tomahawks from the Mediterranean, bringing them in military parlance over the shoulder, which is to say over Syria. Any indication that that has actually been done?
It is theoretically possible, of course.
Hassan should have to pay for this, I think.
And the range is such that they could get to airfields along here. But we really don't know, Dan, whether that's been done or not.
The air war has begun. The psychological war is over. War in the Middle East. Combat in and around the Persian Gulf so far, combined combat in the air. The U.S. Defense Department says that from all indications, quote, things have gone very well so far, end quote. That quote was given to CBS News Defense Department correspondent David Martin. Now, as we await the appearance of President Bush in the Oval Office for his address, let's go to Charles Girault, whose main role here is to monitor events in the United States.
Dan, Walter made the point that in the initial minutes there wasn't any reaction to speak of on the streets of New York. You and I have made the point that President Bush is not leading a united country into this war. Just a couple days ago, our CBS News New York Times poll showed 46% of the people
into the game situation as well as.
Do you know how weird that's going to make me?
Families and all present at today's audience